What's up, people? It is Dave, Duncan Kyle, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Shoegaze duo No Sun. The band's new album, In the Interim, released on September 30th via Church Road Records and Flesh and Bone
When's it been released?
Records. September 30th, Duncan.
Oh, that's not interesting.
Nothing you want to say about that date? No.
September. I think it's a Friday.
Yeah. I think it is a Friday, yeah. Special
Friday the
day.
30th. Yeah. It's my birthday!
Duncan's birthday, everybody. You want to send him a gift? Send him a
Please
gift.
do. Don't have a clue
Send him
what
a
it
message. Send him a message. Put a little message below. Say happy birthday, Duncan, for September the 30th.
is. Yeah, I'll make up for all the difference of being accused that I need to get laid, apparently, which is now a common sentiment on videos. Which is the joke's in them because they don't know that I'm knuckle deep in pussy all the time, Dave.
Especially on his birthday.
Oh God, yeah, be walking like John Wayne.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get down and into some No Sun. In the 4 years since No Sun released their debut album, the band has seen extensive changes, both internally and externally.
Oh dear.
In the Interim, the band's sophomore release is a culmination of these changes that find the band on the other side of a storm. A release that signals the progression as both vision and sound coalesce into something different altogether. The band, now operating as a two-piece dynamic of Salt Lake City-based guitarist, vocalist Jordan Strang and Chicago-based drummer Jake Morse, cast recognisable yet new and curious sounds through a kaleidoscope of fuzz and cymbals. Nice. All songs on the record were written and recorded by Jordan Strang, Jake Morse, Sophie Day and Kobia Goddard. Additional tracks by Brian Bush and Zach Montez. There we go. That is the deets, gentlemen. Never heard of this band before, but Church Road Records, I was like, ooh.
It's usually a label you can trust, Dave.
I'm intrigued. Yeah, I think that this label are fast becoming one of my favourites, to be honest. They put out a lot of good stuff.
They're unassuming, which is good.
Yes, they
You know
are.
what I mean? Like they're literally trading off the quality of the releases thus far, as opposed to, oh yeah, it's Roadrunner. Unless you're Roadrunner, please send us your albums. Don't know about you guys. Looking forward to that new Slipknot.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So, No Sun. Yeah, what to say about No Sun? I think the first thing that kind of hit me about this release was, although it was like a shoegaze album, that guitar tone, when that guitar tone kicks in, there's a bit of kind of feedback at the start of Saturn Returning. It is just like a wave of kind of distortion just kind of floors you. It's got a much more kind of raspy guitar tone than I was expecting, from a shoegaze sounding album, which is usually quite light and quite airy. And this does have that kind of airiness about it, but the guitars are riddled with a warm fuzz. But it's not a heaviness that's like overwhelming. It's got that kind of echoey reverb kind of floating beneath it, that kind of balances it out. And I think I have, right, okay, I've got opposing thoughts on this album, right? I thought I had...
This is what it looks like when a man has a breakdown. Right, what we do here?
I thought I had this album pegged straight away, right?
Oh, did you now, eh?
In a non-sexual way. In a non-sexual way.
Oh, that's what they all say when they've been caught.
Yeah.
When I first listened, I was like, this is a mood album. This is when I'm in the mood for something dreamy, something hypnotic and spacey. This is the kind of album that you're going to reach for. And I was
in
like,
the mood
I've
for
got
a pagan, I've got it, Dave. That's right.
I've got this all figured out. I've got this dust. And that's very much how I felt on the first listen to this.
All right.
It doesn't deviate massively on tempo or stretch massively out of the genre into like other realms. There's no fucking blackened death metal or anything thrown into this. It sticks within the confines of the genre, and it knows what it wants to be. However, on multiple listens to this album,
multiple listens, Kyle.
multiple listens,
More than one.
more than one, multiple,
So at least 2 got it.
at least 2, but not more than 6. I found that opinion started to completely change. The more I listened to this, the more this album became less of a mood piece and more of an anytime album. The more I hear the kind of the different shifts on this album and the character kind of chiseled into each song, the more intrigued I kind of became about this album. And a lot of the moments, like a lot of this is quite subtle, as shoegaze is generally. It doesn't. There's nothing here that kind of stands out in a kind of glaring way, apart from the kind of guitar tone when it kicks in. It's sometimes just the way that they've layered in some lead work, or the way the kind of vocal twists around the melody, or there's some kind of like weird background effect they've used to kind of take you out of that kind of haze that you're in. But there's actually quite a lot of like devil in the detail with this album that I missed on the first listen. It's not until you really kind of listen to it more with a kind of close ear that you'll notice these little things within the album that sometimes they've just left in. Some of them I don't think were actually meant, to be honest. I think they've been quite experimental and quite kind of off the cuff with a lot of this. But it's those kind of little like imperfections that I really kind of warmed to on this album. I love the fact this feels very organic. It doesn't feel like kind of set in stone. There's part of the kind of album that feels like it may have been kind of improvised at the time. Like Vanishing, for example, was this kind of huge, kind of sprawling, clean track with loads of kind of layered guitars, and there's a bit of synths in there. And although it clearly has like a structure and an arrangement of chords, a lot of the melodies and the playing, it kind of felt almost kind of unplanned to me as I was listening to it. And it's not all kind of pure and kind of light either, like a lot of shoegaze. That there are a few kind of darker moments on this release. Sometimes it's just from the guitar sound alone. Like Near to Me is a great example of a track that has that kind of ghostly vibe, but there's almost like a kind of undercurrent of kind of darkness that seeps through in certain sections, makes you feel a little bit uneasy. Or Lie Beneath also throws a little kind of switch and style into the mix with a more almost kind of like this kind of alternative, kind of grungy, kind of heavy guitar style. But it works perfectly with that kind of shoegaze kind of ambience. And then you've got Into the Light, which finishes off the album with what could be probably one of the catchiest kind of vocal melodies of the album, which it kind of like it works very well, because as soon as it finishes you're like, maybe just kind of play that again. I think the other kind of selling point from me in this is the production. I think the production is begging to be played on a really good set of headphones. The production on this, like, it feels like it's kind of making love to your ears. Like it's kind of, it kind of lubes you up first as well, and like pre-lights that little cigarette for you afterwards, if you know what I mean.
Are you sure you weren't pegging this album?
Maybe I was. I started off listening to the album. I had my in-ear kind of Sony earphones in, but about halfway through I was like, nah, wait a minute. It's time to crack open the biggies. And this is an album that it's an album that you will kind of immerse yourself in, and I think a good set of headphones that kind of shuts out the kind of any distractions and noise is the key for listening to this album. I really enjoyed this. I think there's something really kind of alluring about it. I found myself putting it on in between other albums, initially as a bit of a kind of like palate cleanser, but the more I listened to it, it went from like a palate cleanser or background type album to something that I was completely like transfixed on as well. Never heard of the band before, obviously, but really into this. I can see myself coming back to this a lot. It's just got a really kind of nice feeling about it when I'm listening to it. What about you guys? Duncan, what do you think of No Sun?
Yeah, this is fucking awesome. I love this. So the thing that kind of stuck out to me on the immediate listen is, and I like literally finished this album for the first time and put on the upcoming album that I'm about to talk about, Slow Crush, straight into it. Both albums like so similar. And what kind of differentiates the kind of two bands is like production quality. So whereas that most recent Soul Crush album that we discussed last year, is that last year? Must have been, because it wasn't on our mid-year list, so it must have been last year.
I think so.
I remember that the blurb that came with that album talked about this very experimental way of how they had recorded it, including having microphones capturing raindrops that hit upon the like the recording studio ceiling and all the rest. And it was all predicated on the layering of instrumentation. So it was like sounds and atmosphere, but was buried in the mix, which in a lot of respects is kind of the kind of cheeky stuff that shoegaze allows you to experiment with. It's like textures and tones, but it's done in a buried way that the more you, very much like those magic pictures, like as soon as your eyes go out of focus and then try to come in, that's when you see what's in the background. Shoegaze is kind of the same way musically. Like if you allow yourself to kind of almost clear your mind and like delve into the music, that's when you really start to pick out the nuance and the detail. This release is fucking full of that. On a superficial level, it is kind of fuzzy, you know, almost kind of stonery guitar tones, and a lot of times riffs as well. A lot of the chord structures they play with sit within that kind of stonery, rocky sort of vibe. Vocally, oh my god, yeah, just have this guy like sing the phone book to me. I just, like, honestly, you can be my new GPS. Give me directions.
Say peg me there.
Like, just peg me with your voice. I don't know how that works, but do it. He has a very breathy tone, which once again goes with the aforementioned genre. But I don't know what it's about this genre. The monotony of that never feels monotonous. Whereas in, like, if I'm listening to, we reviewed Soulfly not that long ago, and I was like that, if Max could just find, I don't know, another tone, or maybe like another note, just like if he moves up, not even a full octave, just occasionally, I would be happy with that, because it's not just da 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 da. And for some reason this genre gets off with that, and I don't know why that is. Vocally, he never really moves that far out with a kind of confined range, which isn't huge either, but the subtle detail and the change in melody is kind of what makes it really interesting. It's almost approached to very similar to how you would use a synth in music. You know, it's adding a layer of melody, but not remarkable melody, and that kind of breathy tone becomes fairly hypnotic when you're listening to it. I think there's a kind of almost a kind of deconstructed way they've approached the production as well, and that you can hear all the mechanical parts moving, but there's also a degree of mystery to how some of the sims are being created. And that, to me, as someone who listens to a lot of music and likes to try and really work out what's going on, that is a very kind of inviting aspect about it. And they reminded me, like, weirdly, of kind of what would happen if you took like a Mountaineer, the band, not like a guy who climbs mountains, Mountaineer, and a band like Abrams, and kind of meshed them together and made them solely kind of that shoegaze sort of sound. Like, both those bands kind of experiment with that without fully committing to it, and this band's fully committed to it, and that's kind of where I think they'd be an interesting stepping stone between those two bands. Or if a tour of all those three bands came to Scotland, I would go and see it. But yeah, I found myself, unlike yourself who maybe took a few listens to get into it, instantly grabbed me. It's the one that is very different in the three albums that we were covering in this recording day. And as a result of that, I rinsed this one, as you would say, Dave. I revisited this a lot. And I found myself like really infatuated with it the more I listened to it. Now, there's a few reasons behind that. I've mentioned it before. I'm a mark for this genre now. I think it's well and truly in there. It's interesting because I think its popularity, a lot of bands like can be heralded as kind of influencing the kind of shoegaze sort of push, but the obvious band who have brought it to our world is Deftones. And you can hear that in here. They're not chord-wise, but vocally for sure, and certainly with the atmospherics in the background. And they're not shy about it. They're not trying to sound like Chino. They're not trying to sound like the kind of synthier elements that are in there as well. They're trying to sound like themselves, and they've kind of co-opted a style and added it to something a bit more vulgar. Like the guitar work at times is a bit more vulgar than you would expect from this particular genre. It has a bit more bite. It's the bit that, you know, it's the edge of a table that hasn't been sanded off, and you're likely to get a skelf if you rub your hand over it, where the rest is nice and smooth and polished. And it's the quality, it's that tactile quality that I really found myself engaged with from the album. I think there's a surprising amount of attention to detail from something that on a superficial level sounds very rudimentary. You know what I mean? It does, like, if you're not paying attention, this album does come across as something wholly unremarkable. It's a soft-sounding singer with big rocky riffs and very, very concise and non-flashy drumming. But when you listen to it with a bit more of a keen ear, those elements are surprisingly distracting from everything else that's going on, which is very clever songwriting. Excellent production. I mean, the production on this is like damn near chef's kiss. And like a depth that is quite surprising. Like genuinely one of those things that I like. Even upon the first listen of Saturn and Returning, you get that kind of feedbacky sound at the beginning, and even when it kicked in, even within the first minute, I was like, cool, right, awesome, right, just give me this all the way through and I'm fine. And they kind of do, but they don't. Like, all the songs have their own quality and are surprisingly unique in what is captured behind the surface, which is just underneath what you're hearing on the top. I think this is fucking great. I think it starts super strong. I think it closes excellently into the light, which is the last track, not to be confused with the black metal documentary. All the bad happenings where Kyle is. I think when you listen to that as well, that's a track that showcases the band at maybe their most shoegazy in terms of building up those quiet, kind of very clean sounds. And then it hits you in the middle section with a bit of more conventional sounding No Sun before it allows itself to kind of ease out. These guys are in the business of painting pictures. That's what the music is, and they are very, very, very fucking good at it. So yeah, I thought this was excellent.
Nice. Kyle, sometimes a lover, sometimes a hater of shoegaze.
I thought you just meant in general. Sometimes a lover, sometimes a hater.
Sometimes both at the same time.
Hey, some people call him the Space Cowboy. Some people call him Maurice.
Tonight I'm going to call him Kyle.
Some people call him Kyle, like I am right now.
What did you think of this album?
Oh, I mean, what can I say about it that you guys already haven't? First listen, I was like, yeah, a little bit underwhelmed, a little bit like, okay. But that's doing the band a disservice, definitely, because on repeat listens, it's very rewarding, as you guys have said, so I definitely agree with that on that. The first listen through, I was just like, yeah, I didn't know quite what to make of it. I was like, okay, it all sounded a bit samey, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, I was totally wrong. Once you get into it and you sit down with it, you definitely do pick up a lot of the great stuff that's going on, like the clever songwriting and that soft vocal that just ekes through that fuzzy distortion. And it's like, it comes together so well. I think the first time I listened to it on shit headphones, so that was half the issue. Second time on good headphones, and I was like, it makes sense now. I threw those headphones in the trash. Fuck them. You can tell that they're really accomplished musicians because they are playing so very well. They're not 1 year into playing guitar and drums. You can tell that, they're really, really good, but they have such a level of restraint on this, I swear. Like Duncan was saying, it was not flashy drums. The chords and the guitar parts are not like wankery all over the place either, but it's showing such a level of restraint that is, I guess, part of the genre, that it really does, like, you appreciate it because it's like, okay, I bet you can shred all over that guitar, but you're just not doing it. It's just, you know what you want to do, you know what you want to write, you're sticking to it, and it's coming out really, really well. So it's very, it's great in that way. It's if I never heard of this band before, but I definitely want to go and check out anything they've done before if they have, or if listen. Yeah, I would go and check it out. And I want to listen to what they've got coming up next and follow them around like a lost puppy. Because honestly, after 4.5 listens, I was I was listening to this right before we started tonight. So I was like, I absolutely want to keep on listening to it. So. Yeah, the production. Have to mention the production, of course, because fucking, I didn't expect to hear that level of fuzz and massive rocky riffing. And on a shoegaze album, usually it's quite subdued and quite you got to listen to it and it washes over you. But this one is like, nah, fuck. Here's some feedback and a goddamn massive bit of distortion fuzz, and a fat chunky bass sound to go with it, and some not overwhelming drums but very nice sounding drums. And I was like, this is perfect for what it should be. Yeah, this is absolutely a nice organic sounding album. It's very warm. It's not super mellow with that guitar tone, but it can be. The 5th track is super mellow. It's super on the other side of what they're doing, but it works really, really well. And it's produced exactly the same. It's exactly how it should be. So very happy with it. Very enjoyed it on my 4.5 listens.
Excellent. So ratings for this new one from No Sun. Highly enjoyable. I find myself enjoying it even more every time I hear it. And it's one of those albums that just kind of keeps calling you back. Like, have another listen, Dave. Come on. Just take another listen. Come on, see what you think. And I'm really enjoying it. It's something I can see myself coming back to a lot throughout the year. Is it the greatest shoegaze album I've ever heard? No. But it's pretty fucking good. I'm going to go 4.5 on this one. I enjoyed it immensely. Duncan?
Yeah, I'm joining you with a more manly come back and listen to me. Not a,
it's shoegaze though. That's shoegaze. That's how shoegaze talks.
I don't think that's how shoegaze talks. I think you are generalising in a way which is unfair to the genre. So there you go. Not have your generalisation thrust upon me. That's a 4.5. I think this is. It's weird because if you like shoegaze kind of co-opted into the kind of rock and metal genre, 100% this is for you. But if you just like music with really, really, really clever structure and parts and production. I mean, this is almost one of those albums that I feel like should be given to producers to say, you can lower things in the mix. Not everything needs to be here. You know what I mean? This is really, really, really good, and very much like kind of Slow Crush from last year. It's an album that is easily going to be like re-listened to loads and loads, and they're definitely on my radar in the best possible way. I think this is another one of those albums that I imagine a lot of people are going to sleep on. So hopefully, if you've heard this and anything we've said has remotely interested you, you'll go and spend a bit of time with this album and throw some pennies at the band, not physically, digitally, please.
Nice. And Kyle.
Yeah, I'm going to join you. 4.5.
Ooh,
perfect
nice.
For a cloudy day.
Nice. I like it. 3 4.5s for the new album from No Sun in the Interim, out on Church Road Records and Flesh and Bone Records on the 30th of September. Duncan's birthday, just in case you forgot.
It's my birthday!
Links below to the band and to the Bandcamp and to the pre-order link. Check them out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.